Welcome to New York's number two sports show. The Yankees defeat the Tampa Bay Rays, winning 3 of 4 at Georgia and Steinbrenner Field. Uh, Tons of Yankee fans there, as you'd expect, really being at the Yankee complex and just in general, usually at Tropicana Field. It's packed with Yankee fans. So, a bit of a home field advantage away from home, and really a very eventful 4 game set. Really had a bit of everything and a series that the Yankees should have won all 4 games. Really, the loss in game 3 is one of the worst losses you can possibly think of, where the Yankees have a 4-run lead in the ninth inning and Devin Williams is unable to hold that lead and they lose in the extra innings. But surrounding that was a couple of really great pitching performances in games 2 and 4. Carlos Rodón in game 2 is able to lead the Yankees to a 1-0 win. And then in game 4, Max Fried, who's just been sensational as a New York Yankee, was flirting with a no-hitter, and just a bizarre set of circumstances where he actually loses the no-hitter a couple of innings after he gave up what was originally ruled an error turned hit, which was the right call. But uh, the error, I believe, occurred in the 6th inning, and then the change was made right before the bottom of the 8th. But nonetheless, the Yankees pitching gets a couple of shutouts in games 2 and 4, and a nice comeback as well in game 1, where things looked like, I mean, there was a chance that the Rays were going to take a lopsided lead, and the Yankees were able to kind of hang in there and get the job done. So, some of the same contributors that we've seen offensively. I mean, Ben Rice was amazing in game 1 with 4 hits. Paul Goldschmidt's really been the singles machine. Trent Grisham continues to show off power, as well as getting some clutch hits as well. And, you know, with his nonchalant play in center field, finding ways to make nice catches, and has just been a very, very valuable piece to this team in the early going. And a 14-8 record puts the Yankees in a pretty decent position, and it's really, really early. Like I've said, I think 1 through 5, the AL East has got a lot of depth to it, and you stack up the last place team in the AL East against other last place teams on the divisions. And, the AL East team, whoever that may be right now, I believe it's technically the Rays who sit at 9 and 13. Not bad. Now, it's not so top heavy at the moment, and the Yankees are taking advantage of that situation. And I mean, if the Yankees had been fully healthy and you lose Garrett Cole, which is obviously gigantic and I think will have long term effects, Giancarlo Stanton is not in this lineup. Luis Heel is out. For a little bit, Clark Schmidt. And that's just to name a few. There's a lot of bullpen pieces that aren't in the mix as well. And the Yankees are finding a way to play some pretty good ball. This was, again, a series that really could have very easily and should have been 4-0 Yankees, which is not easy to do on the road. I understand, obviously, it's in a familiar place, but against a Tampa Bay Rays team, it's not a bad team. Especially look at the staff. I mean, Tampa Bay's pitching is pretty impressive, and the Yankees were able to hold their own on the offensive side of things. So let's just jump right into it with it being a 4 game set. So a lot to catch up on. And the Yankees were coming off of a sweep home against Kansas City. So really, the unfortunate thing is, could have very well been talking about a 7 game winning streak if the Yankees were able to hold on in game 3, but that did not happen. And the Yankees pitching was really tested. The bullpen was used pretty much the whole way through. And that's tough when you don't have days off. That's part of the problem. And plus, now you still have, you're going straight into a Cleveland series. You have 3 more games as well, and then they'll have a day off on Thursday. But it starts out, and just as far as any transactions are concerned, I don't believe there are any transactions um, heading into or during this series. But if any come to mind, I'll certainly speak on it, but don't seem to remember that there being any. And, the Adam Ottavino kind of on and off the roster. He's been off now for a while. So until further evidence suggests, seems like he won't be a part of the roster. And, I think um, that makes sense. Marcus Stroman seems to be probably not too far away from coming back. And if he were to come back, I still think that the spot that he would take would likely be Carlos Carrasco. We'll talk about him a little bit more as we move along in this episode. But Will Warren would start game 1 for the Yanks and did not pitch very well. Only goes 1 2/3 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and 1 strikeout. So a bit of a funky line where he actually only gives up a run, but really in part because Ryan Yarborough, the former Ray, came in and got out of a pretty big jam in that second inning. But the pitch count was the big problem. 53 pitches thrown in less than 2 innings for Warren. So you've seen a little bit of good and bad with him, right? I mean, if he were kind of your number five, I think you can kind of live with the growing pains, because I think that there's potential with him, but it's been probably more bad than good in his first 4 starts. So, um, as far as the lineup was concerned, the odd man out was Trent Grisham in this one. Really, what you have right now is a bit of a rotation, where it's kind of one person sits out. Really, typically speaking, against righties. Of course, Escar is the backup catcher. Pablo Reyes has a very, very bit role on this team. It's pretty non-existent. And then Oswald Peraza will sit, and then it's kind of, you see who it is, and a lot of the times it's Grisham, sometimes it's Dominguez, Ben Rice, or Cody Bellinger, and they'll kind of flip between the DH and outfield positions. But in this one, it would be Goldschmidt that would lead off, and Goldschmidt, again, he's just been very consistent as far as getting hits. He's not really showing much power. He still only has that 1 home run off of Nestor Cortez, but you're not going to complain when his batting average is sitting at 361. Um, but Ben Rice was the offensive star of this game. With 4 hits, he was actually 4 for 4 at one point, had a really big 2-run hit as well to extend the Yankee lead later on. And actually, the second best hitter was Oswaldo Cabrera, who's been pretty good at the plate. I've had some issues with him defensively, but he's actually been pretty consistent at the dish. But the Yankees would take the lead early. And Taj Bradley was the starter for the Tampa Bay Rays. He picks up the loss, so he drops to 2-1. He goes 5 1/3, 9 hits, 6 runs, 4 walks, and 3 strikeouts. So a pretty ugly line for Bradley. And it was, in the first inning, it was Aaron Judge who gets an RBI single to give the Yankees a 1-0 lead after a couple of hits by Goldschmidt and Rice to start it out. And the Yankees really had a chance to maybe tack on more, but were unable to do so. And it wouldn't come back to bite them as they win the game, but would have been nice to have done more there. And then in the second inning is where things really, really go south for Will Warren. Um, as there would be, basically, long story short, you have bases loaded, 1 out, and Taylor Walls gets a sac fly. But then just a lot of long at bats, too many walks, and after Cameron Meisner is walked to set up a base loaded situation, Boone goes to Yarborough, which was interesting just because, again, the score was still 1-1 at that point. And, it did kind of, this basically had somewhat of a domino effect because it kind of put the Yankees in a tough spot the rest of the series because the bullpen was spent. You couldn't go back to Yarborough after this outing. He ends up throwing 56 pitches, and it was not great for him, but he does get a big strike out of Brandon Lau to keep the score tied at 1. But then in the bottom of the third, Junior Caminero hits a 2-run homer off of Yarborough to give the Rays a 3-1 lead, and it could have been worse. After that, it's actually bases loaded, but Taylor Walls grounds into a double play where Chisholm makes the play, and they get Walls out at first, who's got a lot of speed. So that holds it at 3-1, and the Yankees chip away a bit. And as Waldo Cabrera in the fifth inning hits his first homer of the year to cut it to 3-2, and then you get the top of the order does their thing again, where Goldschmidt gets a hit, Rice double, Judge walk, and then Cody Bellinger gets an RBI ground out to make it 3-3. So with Bellinger, there's been a lot of struggles. He does hit a home run at the end of this series, which I hope can get him going, but a lot of times where even in the fourth game, where he had a potential double play that he beat out. That's also what happened in game 1. So that makes it 3-3. Tim Hill would come on to replace Yarborough, and he's able to get out of what was a jam there in the fifth. And Tim Hill, since he's been a Yankee, he's done a good job of that. Tim Hill actually ends up with the win in this game, thanks due to the Yankees scoring in the sixth. And I should also mention that it was a scheduled off day for Austin Wells in game 1. So JC Escar was in the lineup as well. And Jason Dominguez gets an RBI ground out and a first and third no out situation. So Chisholm with the walk, Escar with the single, and Dominguez with the RBI ground out to make it 4-3. And then Taj Bradley is taken out of the game after he walks as Waldo Cabrera. Emmanuel Rodriguez comes in, and after Goldschmidt grounds out at second and third, two out, and Ben Rice with a huge opposite field two-run single to give the Yankees a little bit of breathing room and making it 6-3. So just an unbelievable game for Ben Rice, and that would be his fourth hit of the night as well. So Tim Hill pitches a 1-2-3-6, and then Ian Hamilton would come on in the seventh inning, replacing Hill after he got the first out in the seventh, and Hamilton looked good. This is probably Hamilton's most impressive outing of the season as he goes 1 2/3 innings, allowing one hit, no runs, no walks, and three strikeouts. So the bullpen did a great job. After Yarborough struggled a bit, but between Hill, Hamilton, and then Devin Williams, who we'll talk about later in this episode for all the wrong reasons. But Devin Williams is able to get his fourth save of the season with a 1 2 3 innings. Oswald Peraza, I should also mention, Jazz Chisholm Jr. gets ejected from this game in the seventh inning after complaining about balls and strikes. And he had a point. I mean, it was interesting. I think he was actually given a call at one point in that at bat. Um, yeah, like ball three was actually should have been strike three, but then strike three definitely should have been ball four. And then Chisholm actually sent out a tweet in the clubhouse, and so that led to him being suspended for one game, which he's appealing. So we'll see if that gets dropped to nothing or if that stands, and then I'll have to serve that one game suspension. But yeah, the Yankees get the win. And what I wanted to say was Oswald Peraza at second base actually made a couple of really nice plays, and one helping out Devin Williams in the ninth inning as well. So the Yankees win game one, bit of a resilient win for them, winning 6-3, and really some big moments where it could have gotten out of hand, where Yarborough and Hill got out of some jams, and it led the Yankees just having that ability to score those runs in the fifth and sixth inning. And again, Ben Rice with four hits, and the Yankees win 6-3. Game two would be between Carlos Rodon and Drew Rasmussen. And Rasmussen has really been very good against the Yankees in his career, just in general. He's a good pitcher. I mean, he's had some injury problems, but he was really good in this one. He picks up the loss, tough luck loss, 5 2/3 innings, three hits, one run, three walks, and seven strikeouts. And Carlos Rodon gets the win. And that was a good bounce back outing after a disappointing loss to San Francisco. 6 innings, two hits, no runs, four walks, nine strikeouts. So still too many walks. That's been a problem for him, but only two hits, nine strikeouts. And, you're always waiting for Rodon to, mess up in the big spot. Well, that didn't happen in this one. So you got to give him some credit there. In what has been a pretty shaky beginning of the season for Rodon. Boston Wells was out again in game two. That came as a surprise, and it was due to food poisoning. So the Yankees have had a couple of food poisoning situations. Cody Bellinger had an issue in Detroit, and then here with Austin Wells. But he would be good to go for games 3 and 4. But Ascara was in again, so back-to-back games for Ascara. And then the odd man out of the lineup in this game was Jason Dominguez. So that meant that Cody Bellinger would play left, Grisham in center. And speaking of Trent Grisham, he ends up getting the one RBI hit. It's an RBI single for him in the second, two out, one at that. So Goldschmidt leadoff single, a one out walk for Ascara, and then Trent Grisham is able to get an RBI single, make it 1-0. Who would have thought at the time that'd be the only run, but that is what it was, and that would stand. Yankees with some really good defense as well, on both sides actually in this game. And Anthony Volpe with a couple of really nice ones. And with Volpe, the defense has really, by and large, been very, very good. And he's been, he's graded out well since he's been in the big leagues, but I feel like even more so, the eye test looks better. However, at the plate, it's been a bit of a struggle. Now, he did have a couple of hits, and I'm jumping ahead here. He did have a couple of hits in the last game of the series, and but he's been striking out a lot. He's been a really big slide. The numbers aren't great. He's really being attacked with that fastball upstairs, and he's going for it, and he's late on it. And so those numbers right now, he's down to 213, 729 OPS. That's probably, if I had to guess, that's probably close to league average. It's okay. But definitely has not been good after that really great start. Really, the Volpedo, he was kind of the poster child of the torpedo bats, but hasn't been great for him. But he has been doing well defensively. And for Rodon, he was helped as well. Well, again, I'm jumping at here because it was actually Mark Leiter Jr., but the Rays on the base paths were a little aggressive at the wrong times. Um, but a nice play by Paul Goldschmidt in the fifth. They get into a little bit of trouble where Caballero gets a leadoff double, then a ground out moves him over to third. And Taylor Walls grounds out to Paul Goldschmidt, and they get Caballero in a rundown, and they eventually get him out. Walls would go to second, but Rodon would strike out Yandy Diaz to end the inning. Um, and Rodon was pretty fired up as he struck out Danny Jansen, who actually didn't really do damage against the Yankees. Danny Jansen, formerly of the Toronto Blue Jays, and has had just amazing career numbers against the Yankees, really was held down for the most part in the series. But Mark Leiter Jr. comes on in the seventh, and um, you know, he's been decent. He at this point, he's, more towards the top of the high leverage chain for the Yankees. He picks up his third hole, but he actually starts out where Jonathan Aranda gets a double, and Aranda's been very, very good. Really one of the best offensive players in baseball in the early going. But he gets a little bit too aggressive as he tries to get a triple with no outs. You can't get that first out at third. And Aranda is thrown out. Grisham to Volpe to Oswaldo, a nice relay there to get him at third. And then from there, a couple of strikeouts for Leiter Jr. To end the inning. And then in the eighth is where Ben Rice is absolutely robbed of a home run by Caballero in right field. Would have been a 2-run homer. Um, the wind was pushing some of these balls in, so that happened a little bit, but just the athleticism by Caballero to jump up and get that one was one of the better home run robberies you'll see. And so unfortunate where Rice, again, the night before gets 4 hits, and here, nothing to show for it. But in the eighth, Fernando Cruz with a very impressive 1-2-3 inning with a couple of strikeouts. His stuff is nasty. Again, for him, it's a matter of limiting the walks, but he's got the stuff to be a top end reliever. And then Luke Weaver, who's just been as money as you can ask for, dating back to last season. He's just, um, so reliable. He's able to get the save. Devin Williams was unavailable, having pitched the night before, and Luke Weaver pitches a 1-2-3 ninth inning with a couple of strikeouts. So the Yankees win 1-0. And now in game three, they're going for the series win, which it looked like they were going to get. And what was a lopsided pitchers duel, not pitchers duel, probable pitchers was leaning heavily advantage Rays, with it being Carlos Carrasco versus Shane Baz. But the Yankee offense got to Baz. He goes 3 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 5 runs, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. Um, and a hit by pitch as well by Baz. And Carlos Carrasco did not do great. Now, it ends up being somewhat inconsequential as far as what he did in this game, because the Yankees end up really having a 4-run lead in the ninth inning. But Carrasco, not a great outing, 4 innings, 6 hits, 4 runs, 2 walks, and 1 strikeout. So, he had that random good outing against Kansas City. But besides that, it's been a pretty big struggle. And as bad as Marcus Stroman is, you'd think that he'd be a little bit better than Carrasco when Stroman comes back. I just feel like it's a matter of time before Carrasco is off the roster, but he continues to stay on, and I guess he is capable of every now and then doing all right, but not in this one. This would be a game where, again, Austin Wells returns. Cody Bellinger was the one who would start out on the bench. And then as well, Ben Rice in the middle of this game is hit by a pitch, hit on his back elbow, his left elbow, and was a little bit of a scare. I mean, the fact that he had to leave the game, he wouldn't play the last game of the series, but it seems like he's trending in the right direction. X-rays came back negative, and I'd like to believe that he'd be back by the end of the Cleveland series. Maybe he misses the first game or two, just, out of an abundance of caution, but it seems like he's in a decent spot, barring something unforeseen. But that did, you hate to lose him, and you hope that it doesn't get, sidetrack him a little bit, because obviously he's been one of the Yankees' best hitters. But the Yankees, again, they are able to score first um, in the first inning. What really could have been a big inning ends up not being so well. They do get 2 runs, so I guess not all bad, as Paul Goldschmidt, with the bases loaded and no out, grounds into a double play. So no RBI, but they score a run, and then Jazz Chisholm Jr., which is rare, he gets an RBI single to make it 2-0. So Chisholm, who's been kind of all or nothing, it's either home runs or outs, and a lot of them strikeouts. He is able to get a single here to make it 2-0 Yanks. And then in the second inning, Trent Grisham's at it again as he homers his fifth homer of the year to make it 3-0. And then the Rays do score in the bottom of the third on a Yandy Diaz RBI single against Carlos Carrasco. And then the fourth inning, you get 3 runs on both sides. It starts with the Yankees as they knock Shane Baz out of the game. And with bases loaded, 1 out after the Ben Rice hit by pitch, Aaron Judge gets a 2-run single to make it 5-1. And then Austin Wells with a sac fly to make it 6-1. And Wells, his numbers are not great, but he homers in the last game. And again, hopefully that's a sign of things to come because, offensively, it's been a struggle for Austin Wells. But then the bottom of the fourth with a 6-1 lead, the Yankees play a bit of sloppy defense. Junior Caminero with a double to start the inning, but Jason Dominguez, it's a play he probably could have made. Um, and eventually you get an RBI single by Jake Mangum, 6-2. There'd be a ground rule double by Jose Caballero to make it second and third. And then Ben Rortvedt, the former Yankee, with 2 out, is able to get a 2-run single and make it 6-4. So not a great job by Carrasco. I believe there was another defensive miscue, not an error, but somewhere along the line in that inning that kind of prolonged things. And so that makes it 6-4. And the score would remain that way for a while. And, the Yankee bullpen did a good job as Ian Hamilton got into some trouble in the fifth and Carrasco gave up a double to start the inning. And Hamilton, it was a walk. There was a wild pitch, but Trent Grisham makes a nice catch on a fly ball by Jake Mangum to keep the score at 6-4. Pablo Reyes, by the way, would pinch hit for Ben Rice. So it was kind of the first we've seen Pablo Reyes in any real capacity in a while. Hamilton's sixth inning was a lot better. And then in the seventh inning, Mark Leiter Jr. comes on, goes 1-2-3. So, good job by him. And then in the eighth, Luke Weaver doing what he does, picks up his sixth hold. And gets a couple of strikeouts at a 1-2-3 inning. And then the ninth inning off of Pete Fairbanks, the Rays closer in a non-save situation. The Yankees get a couple of runs as Aaron Judge gets an RBI single to make it 7-4. But then there's a situation where, and again, this shouldn't have mattered, but it did, where they are up 7-4. It's first and third, no out. And they go, and Aaron Judge tries to steal second. Austin Wells, first off, swings at a pitch out of the zone for strike three. And then Aaron Judge is caught stealing. So not what you're looking for there, but the Yankees still do get that runner across from third. An infield RBI single by Paul Goldschmidt makes it 8-4. And then after a Chisholm Jr. walk, they take Fairbanks out. Edwin Uceta comes on and Anthony Volpe strikes out. So what really could have, put the Rays out, they're unable to do that. And if they scored more, Devin Williams wouldn't have pitched that ninth inning. Now, Yoendris Gomez would have been the alternative, which isn't great. But the fact of the matter is that, if they're able to make it a 5-run, 6-run game, Devin Williams wouldn't have been in there. And it's interesting, the Yankees, they kind of deem 4-run games as safe, even though they're not in the book safe situations. That's how they've done it. In recent years, like when they make it a 4-run game, expect to see the closer in there, and that's exactly what happens. And for Devin Williams, it starts out all right. He gets a grand at the start of the inning. He's ahead of Jose Caballero, and then it all goes downhill for Devin Williams and what has been a pretty disastrous beginning to his Yankee career. And it looked like things were kind of turning around, but then this just sets it back completely as Caballero hits a ground ball to Oswaldo Cabrera at third base. And it goes down as a single, but Oswaldo needed to make a better play on this. It was, he needs to charge that and needs to make a better throw because it's a throwing error and it moves Caballero to second. So just not a great job there. More blame to Oswaldo. I mean, look, you'd love to get a strikeout if you're Devin Williams there, but this should have been a more simplistic play. Where Devin Williams goes really wrong is he walks Ben Rortvedt. You cannot do that. That's unacceptable. And then Chandler Simpson, who in his first start of his major league career, and I believe this was his first hit, it's a ground roll double to the opposite field, and now things are set in motion. 8-5 game, second and third, 1 out, and Yandy Diaz is able to tap a ball towards short, and Anthony Volpe's playing back. And again, you're looking for Volpe to be a little bit more aggressive on the charge, and Yandy Diaz is able to beat out the infield single to make it 8-6. Then Taylor Walls pinch runs for Yandy Diaz and picks up a very key steal of second. So now all of a sudden, a hit, to the outfield presumably ties the game, and that's exactly what happens. Is Brandon Lau gets a game-tying 2-run single to make it 8-8. Pretty remarkable turn of events where the Yankees are up by 4 runs. They have 1 out. It's a 1-2 count on Jose Caballero, and they found a way for 5 straight batters to reach, and it's 8-8. Then, ironically, the hardest hit ball was Junior Caminero, um, after they tied the game, and it's Oswaldo Cabrera who makes a really nice play at third to start a 5-4-3 double play. So we go to extra innings, and the Yankees have just been horrendous in recent years, especially on the road and extra innings, where they're unable to manufacture runs. And Trent Grisham looked like he may have had an RBI single, but Anthony Volpe doesn't get the greatest read on it from second base. He was the ghost runner, and they hold him at third. As a result of that, he wasn't going to be able to score based on the fact that I guess he wasn't sure if it was going to go through. And then Cody Bellinger, who came in for defensive purposes for Dominguez, strikes out. Just, a really bad job by Bellinger, who has had massive struggles at the plate this season. To not do something productive there is rough. And then Oswaldo Cabrera strikes out, and that's not good either. And then JC Escarra pinch hits for Reyes and flies out to right. So they don't score there, and you can't feel great about that with Yoendris Gomez coming out. And it would be Jonathan Aranda with the walk-off 2-run homer, his 4th homer of the year, and the Rays miraculously win 10-8. So, as good as the 3 out of 4 feels, and that really should be the main thing, that loss is a real, real rough one for the Yankees, and specifically Devin Williams. So now we go to game 4. Yankees, again, looking to get that series win, and they would get it, again, to improve to 14-8. Max Fried's just been great as the new ace with no Garrett Cole this season. He improves to 4-0 on the season. 7 2/3 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 2 walks, only 2 strikeouts, but he was in full control, and only having the 2 strikeouts allowed him to get deeper into the game. And he did have a no-hit bid for a while. Ben Rice was out off of the hit by pitch the game before, and Trent Grisham, with his first leadoff appearance as a Yankee, and makes good on it with a leadoff home run, his 6th homer of the season, and home runs in back-to-back games for Grisham. And it would be a home run off of Ryan Pepio at a pretty decent outing. The loss drops into 1-3, 6 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, 1 walk, and 7 strikeouts. But the home run ball got to him in his first inning of work and his last inning of work, and that last inning of work being against Cody Bellinger. But the Yankees take a 1-0 lead. And then in the third, they would score another one as Oswaldo Cabrera would lead off double. A 1-out single by Judge makes it first and third, 1 out. And Cody Bellinger is able to beat the wrap on a potential double play. So it's an RBI ground for Bellinger, makes it 2-0 Yankees. And then we're going to jump ahead. I mean, there were some pretty good defensive plays along the way. Also, a couple of throwing errors by Oswaldo Cabrera, which isn't great because, again, I'd been sort of not thrilled with his defense going into this game, and then he makes a couple more mistakes. And Oswaldo, to me, like, even though, I think he's underrated as, a left-handed hitter, really his calling card has been his versatility and his just really solid defensive play. So you don't want him to slip there. Um, there was a nice pickoff from where Max Fried got Christopher Morel at second base, the nice tag by Jazz Chisholm Jr. Trent Grisham made a really nice play on Jake Mangum in the 5th inning where they double up Danny Jansen at second. Then Cody Bellinger homers, his 2nd homer of the year, his first homer off of a righty to make it 3-0 Yankees. And then we go to the bottom of the 6th, and this is where there's a little bit of controversy, where Chandler Simpson originally ruled an error on a ground ball to Paul Goldschmidt, which would later be changed before the bottom of the 8th. So 2 innings later, while Fried still had a no-hitter, they changed the call to a hit. It really should have been just a hit originally, or at least if you're going to call it an error, by the end of that inning, a few minutes later, you change it. So I had no problem with the call. It's just the amount of time it took, given the situation, was one of the odder things you'll ever see. And then in the 7th, while you still think there's a no-hitter, Jazz Chisholm Jr. makes a great catch on a pop-up by Christopher Morel behind second base to keep that no-hitter through 7 innings. And then in the 8th inning, there's more controversy as Aaron Judge hits what looked to be a potential home run, but was called foul. And based on replay, and they did review it, it looked clearly fair. Now, the problem with this stadium is that it's not your normal major league dimension foul pole. It's a lot lower. So it does lead, certainly on the field, it doesn't look as clear cut. But looking at the review, it definitely looked fair. It's a little bit dumbfounding as to how they could have possibly gotten it wrong. But nonetheless, and it sucks because Aaron Judge, who has great offensive numbers, you know, has that home run taken off the board there, and Aaron Boone would eventually be ejected. And really, it was his anger was mainly directed towards the third base ump, even though he was ejected by the home plate ump. Um, Nonetheless, the Yankees remain up 3-0. And again, before the bottom of the eighth is when they make that change to Max Fried's no hitter actually being a one hitter. And then Jake Mangum gets a single. So no controversy anymore because he gives up a clean hit and then he gets a couple of outs and is taken out by the end of the eighth inning. So a great outing for Fried. Fernando Cruz comes on in what was a save situation, gives up a walk to Yandy Diaz, but then gets Junior Caminero to pop out. They bring on the Rays lefty reliever Garrett Clevenger in the ninth inning. It's a home run for Austin Wells, lefty home run, and hopefully the home run by Wells, the home run by Cody Bellinger can get them going because their numbers are really poor, to this point of the season. So 4-0 Yankees. So another 4-run lead for the Yankees going to the ninth, and it gets a little bit dicey as Fernando Cruz walks Jonathan Aranda and Christopher Morel to make it first and second, no out. But he is able to get out of it as Curtis Meade strikes out, and then Danny Jansen grounds into a double play. So it's Fernando Cruz's second save in short order. He goes 1-1/3 innings, 3 walks and 1 strikeout to give the Yankees a 4-0 lead, and they win the series. They win 3 out of 4 at Tampa, and now they will head to Cleveland to take on the Cleveland Guardians, who I believe are coming off of a sweep at Pittsburgh. They've been playing better lately. They're at 12-9. This is an ALCS rematch, and the Yankees have fared well against Cleveland for the most part. It's funny. They've had some individual really tough losses, especially at Cleveland, but on the whole, they've really done well against them, and the pitching matchups aren't that bad. Now, obviously, you don't have Max Fried on the Yankee side, but just looking at the Cleveland starters, the fact they're all righties as well, you may get some solid offense to the Yankees, but we'll see. It'll be Clark Schmidt versus Devin Williams in Game 1. Game 2 will be Will Warren versus Tanner Bybee, and Bybee, who was really good for Cleveland last year, his numbers are off to a rough start this year. And then in the final game, it'll be Carlos Rodón against Luis Ortiz in Game 3. So should be an interesting matchup there. Cleveland, likely just because they've been that way in recent years, probably one of the better teams in the American League coming out of the Central. So a very eventful 4-game set where the Yankees defeat the Tampa Bay Rays 3 out of 4.